is going to be an ink and wash. Now, when it comes to ink, I just want to quickly go through because I don't know how many of you actually use ink at all, but there are several inks you can buy, and there are several ways of delivering the ink to your paper. Cheapest way is just one of these economic pens, like the mechanical nib pens. You know, they've just got a prescribed 0.5, 0.3, 0.7, 1 mil steel nib, and they will run out when they run out, and you ditch them because they are not they can't be replaced or replenished with supplies, so they're a done deal. They're fine liners, black fine liners. They're normally pigment inks, and they are waterproof inks, and they're ideal for ink and wash. However, if you do a lot of ink and wash and you want to get something that's a little better than that, then and have options, then you need to buy yourself ink. Now, these are just two. You can buy, there are many others, and I've got more on the shelf. So I'm flicking my head around as though you guys can see what I'm doing, but you can't. So, you'll see me. I can't do any flicking around on the other camera because it will come up on that one. Anyway, carbon ink is my favorite at the moment. It is a nice black ink, and as opposed to some of the others, this one is not bad. Tends to be a little bit on the grayer side to the black, but this one definitely is the blacker of the two.
Can you repeat what brand those were, because it's not that clear, the picture?
Yeah, this is Platinum, and it's carbon ink. That's Platinum. This one is, you're going to make me try and pronounce this, aren't you? This is Ruhr and Klinger, German company. And this is ink, it's sketching. This one, they give all their inks by a lady's name. This one, the black one, is called Lottie. So, as regards pens, well, apart from the one that I've described, you can, of course, use a purchase pen. Now, these are from an American company called FWR, and that is a company that do flexible nibs. And they can be found online in the US. But it's just two pens. I mean, the common garden ones will be, I put a few details in the information when I put out the video on to the school. But there are lots of different ones that you can buy. Alternatively, you can just go for a dip pen. This is just a dip pen. This is a Browse nib, which is quite a flexible nib, quite a nice nib. They're not very expensive, and this is a pen holder that this would go into, and this is one that a lot of the manga guys use. It's just got a nice grip to it. I think this costs, with a few nibs and one or two handles, cost about £10 or £11, something like that. Not too expensive. But then you need some ink. You can use some of the ones I've just described, or indeed you can get yourself some black ink, which is a India ink. But you don't ever put India ink through these. You will screw it up in a heartbeat if you do that. This is the only time you use India ink is if you've got a mapping pen that can be cleaned off at the end. So either way will work for our purposes, and I'm just going to dip into this and just show you how you can play around. A nib like this will go thin, and it will go thick, and it will go thin, and it will go thick until it runs out of feed. Simple. Thick, thin. The tines are flexible, so you can adjust the marks that you're making. Equally on a flexible nib. Now, these are flexible. Other ones that you buy are not flexible, and you have to buy pens with nibs in that are the right for you. But these are flexible nibs. This will come down to deliver very much a thick mark, a thin mark, a thick mark, a thin mark, and so on. And it's a flexible nib, and it will deliver that because there's play in there, and you can muck about with that. So for ease tonight, I'm probably not going to use the dip pen. Knowing my luck and the way the evening's gone so far, I'll end up throwing this lot all across the table, on my lap, over my paper. Get rid of that. Look at our squirrels. Squirrels drawn out, ready to go. And somewhere here I have got a reference. Okay, so let's get this one underway. Now the line drawing has already been put down and the graphite has been erased somewhat by a putty rubber. I didn't want too much there, I just wanted enough to suggest the contours, the outlines and some of the details of the animal. Now the line that I'm putting in is with a flexible nib, so I can press harder and the tines will part and deliver more ink where I want them. I'm also using some cross hatching, especially in the eye. I want it quite dark, but I also want the outer even darker. So I'm adding more ink to that, and I just decided to put that little bit of catch light down a little bit. I think it was a little too big from my initial drawing. But all the time I'm looking at the animal overall. I'm checking on the fur length and the fur direction, and I'm trying to replicate that in my pen marks. And if I want it a little denser, I will go over an area again and increase how many marks that I put down in that particular space. And conversely, if I don't want too much, if I want to suggest more light in the fur, I will put many fewer marks in there and not concentrate the work on the line at that point. And that way, a little bit like mezzotint with a newspaper, you know, if you've got dark or black marks, then there's so much dot work going on with the newspaper print. And of course, again, conversely, if it's white, then there's little or none. And every shade of grey between that is going to have an ever increasing amount of dots until you get the picture built up. Well, with ink, you don't really have the luxury of anything else other than black and white in the same way. So you do need to think about how dense you make your mark making when you come in along to do a drawing. I'm starting to look at the tail. I'm using much longer marks, more scratchy marks, very thick marks, putting a little bit more pressure on here and there to suggest the feathery long filaments and the longer hairs on that beautiful tail of the animal. So I will just come in, I will fill in, and you can see I'm coming in with even more directional fur, and I'm also coming in to finish off the hindquarters and build up all that depth of drawing that I need. And at the end of the day, it is the drawing that I feel is the essence of line and wash. The color in my book is really to enhance the line drawing, the line work, the ink work, whichever way you want to describe it. I'm going to finish this one off with a little bit of suggested grass and patchiness in the foreground mainly, not very much on the outside, just enough to suggest that there is longer grasses that this animal is sitting on, and it also ties it into terra firma. And then I'm going to get ready to put some colour on, and I've got to let this one dry first though. That's the main thing. Now before I put anything on here, I do need for this ink to dry. I did tell you that this is what they call a wet ink. It does take a little longer to dry than some of the other brands. I mean, you could buy in a Noodler's ink, which is an American ink. You can buy the German one that I spoke of at the beginning. Those are drier inks, and as such, they dry a little quicker. You don't have to wait too long to be able to get some colour onto the painting itself. But this does take a little bit to dry. And once it is dry, what I would tend to do is just go over with an eraser, just to start with. I think the inking on this is done. I will just mute myself if I can and put the hairdryer on it. I'm just going to come over with some, this is old paint from whenever I last did a watercolour in here. And it's just a bit of lavender that has got mixed up and left and dried. But it's certainly good for purpose today. It's just to come on. I think I use this. No, I can't remember what I use it on now. But anyway, it doesn't really matter too much. But I'm just going to put on this simple wash. And ink and wash is, as it suggests, it is a ink drawing that is supported by a wash of colour. And if your ink is dry, it should not do any bleeding at all. I'm going to add to that and add some more colour into here, into this part through here. Okay, for me, adding colour to a lovely line drawing or an ink drawing has to be more about adding complementary information to support the line drawing and not overworking and detailing too much colour on our animal or on our subject. Now, I'm using some lovely violet grey colours, and those are mainly lavender, which I've knocked off of its base and used a little bit of complementary to subdue the tone. And I've also done the same thing with the warm colors with some raw sienna, just to knock that out of the ballpark. And so I've got a warm color, I've got a cool color, but they're not saturated. I've muted them down. The greens, however, are quite a light green. I've added a little bit of red to some of that to make the green a little bit more natural. And what you're seeing here is I've used the green and I've worked in the negative spaces around the tail, so that when it comes to the final look of that tail, it will look as though there's a bit of light hair or fur right on the top and down the back part of it. I've come in with some darker greens. Again, I've used a mix of yellows and blues and also added a little bit of red in there to shift it and make it look more natural. And I'm just using some of that ink, some of that paint, just to suggest different levels of grass, layers of grass going backwards into the far distance and a little bit more in the foreground. And I've left an awful lot of white paper to suggest light areas. Now I'm coming in with a second layer, the first layer having dried. I'm putting some more detailed greys in and some more detailed warms around the face and the head. Nothing too much more than I've put on originally. I'm just actually stating the things a little bit heavier, making more of them, a little bit more of the shadows and the lights where I need them to be most defined. Let that dry, come back and have another look at it in a little while. All right, now I'm going to come in with a darker. I'm going to use some indigo. And I'm going to add to that some of the Aussie Gold. No, that's not Aussie Gold. That's a that's quinacridone. Okay, there's the Aussie Gold. Went in the wrong pile. That's very, very strong and way too much for what I want. So I'm going to come across here, remix into there. See what that looks like. And it's very, very powerful. So I'm going to knock it back a little, I think, and I'm going to use some cobalt to do that. See how the cobalt's struggling to do it, but we'll see if we get a little bit of red to there as well. All right, now if you've got spare paper, then I would just test it. I think we're good. That's very, very warm. All right, so the answer to that, I'm going to come in with some more blue in the form of ultramarine to do the job. And it's going to give me my dark accents on the tail, coming around the back of the animal, coming down to the ground. And then I'm going to use just a little bit with more blue, take some off the side and just flick that into there, just to support the shadow area under the side and the back end of the rump. Okay, just bring that into there. Okay, so for this last section then, all I'm doing is going over the whole painting. I'm adding considerable darks here and there, warmer ones, cooler ones, as I feel that are needed. All of them are to accentuate the contrast and make the animal stand out from the background, to anchor it in the grass. There's some nice dark shadowy marks at the base of the animal as well, all helping to define the shape and the placement so it looks as though it's sitting in the grass. Now don't forget, I have got my scores. I've got my free score, which you can check out. The details of that and my paid score are in the show more tab underneath this and other recent videos. And the free score, I've got to say, it's growing in popularity. There is a live stream every week, a live event where I demonstrate not only a new topic, but a different medium, and I keep swapping around, keep coming back to other mediums and just showing you generally what there is to be enjoyed through different mediums and wildlife and landscape painting. And at the same time, I add in my full length tutorials for you to enjoy. So I hope you take a look at that. As I say, the links to both of those are down in the Show More tab under this video and other videos, and I look forward to your company maybe in the school at some point. Don't forget to like, subscribe if you feel that I've done enough to earn your subscription. It does help. It helps me reach a much greater audience around the world. That would be fantastic if you do that. And if you want to help support the channel and help me pay for some of the costs involved in making these videos for you, you can always buy me a coffee if you feel so disposed. That would be awesome. Every penny that I get from that always goes back in. So let's get back to the final part and the summing up of this video, but I look forward to your company in the next one very, very soon. Take care, have fun, enjoy your painting. It's one of those. I mean, ink and wash is not about huge detail. Not in my book. I mean, ink and wash for me is to have a more of a graphic illustration of what you're trying to achieve. We've achieved a squirrel, we've got an ink, we've got line and wash. We haven't got into heavy with colors. We're not trying to do a photographic reproduction. We're not doing an oil or a gouache or anything like that. So I think it's done the job we intended to do as an ink and wash study. And so from that point of view, I'm quite happy with it. I'm going to take the tape off. There we are.